What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on the astrological 12th house, but also the 8th house in this one. I'm talking about where to go to find and identify problems dealing with these two houses. So I'm going to start with the 8th house. Remember, the 8th house is more the subconscious. 12th house is more the unconscious. So sub meaning beneath consciousness, below the surface. So we think of the water signs. Scorpio, rules the 8th house. The water signs being different parts of the ocean, right? Cancer is sort of the surface, the turbulent surface of the ocean, and maybe all the things that are on it. And then Scorpio is the depths of the ocean, the dark, deep depths. And then Pisces is the life in the ocean, all the fish in the sea, all the ocean life. So we're dealing with scorpionic, subconscious issues when we're talking about 8th house issues, and whatever shows up for you based on whatever placements you have in the 8th house, or whatever's going on in someone else's chart that they bring into your 8th house, So if you have Scorpio in the 8th house, for example, maybe Aries rising or whatever, but you don't have any planets in the 8th house, someone who has Scorpio placements shows up in those ways in your 8th house, illuminates some darkness that would otherwise be invisible to you. So being that we sort of know where the 8th house is, even if we don't want to face it, we know where to go to deal with 8th house problems. Well, to first identify them. You have to identify the problem before you go about dealing with it. So we know where to go. It's beneath the surface. You just have to dive down in there and search for it, And also, when we find 8th house problems, we find that they show up in more tangible ways. It's things more of the physical. It's sex as a weapon. It's, other people's money and gambling. It's drug and alcohol abuse more often than in the 12th house. The 12th house is more about, metaphysical existential troubles. 8th house is more about tangible coping mechanisms, walls that we put up to guard our insecurities, our weaknesses in a scorpionic way, right? So we know where to go. Now, if you go into this realm looking for 12th house problems, you're only going to get the surface, if anything at all. We don't want to think about 12th house issues as being things that are tangible or even dealt with in tangible ways. There can be some of that involved, but it's not fundamentally tangible. It's not fundamentally subconscious. It's unconscious. Unconscious. You don't know where it is, right? It might be beneath the surface, but only partly. It's also the surface. It's also everything beneath and on the surface. It's also the air above the surface. It's also the universe beyond that. Remember, the 12th house is everything all at once. Everything that we know, everything that we don't know, everything that we can know, everything that we cannot know. It is all worlds, real and hypothetical. It's the physical, but it's also, and more fundamentally, the metaphysical. It's not the things in themselves. It's the connections between things. So you can go beneath the depths in the ocean, in your own ocean. You can find 8th house things. You can see them, you can observe them, and you can attack them and deal with them. But the nature of a 12th house issue is more abstract. It's not the things in themselves, it's the connections between things and the connections between levels, between the beneath the surface and everything that is beyond that. It's the patterns that emerge when you take the most holistic perceptual view that you can of a given situation and all other situations at the same exact time. So you see why the 12th house is difficult to deal with. The normal rules of language and logic that we use here on this earth to deal with our pragmatic issues, even a lot of our ethical issues, simply don't apply to the 12th house because they're merely a small part of 12th house issues. So you have to be able to think beyond the scope of those limiting structural systems that are really just tools for us to gain resources, and even gain connections with other people that result in resources, our ability to survive here in the world, et cetera, et cetera. There's always an end in sight when we're using language, and the basic reasoning, day-to-day reasoning that humans use to go about their tasks. So 12th house issues, yes, it involves that, but it's not fundamentally buried in these things that we can observe. It's the connections between things that we can observe, and everything else that is beyond that, and the connections between those things and the things that we can observe. And it's our conscious ability to make connections at all, So I kind of like to bring consciousness, the way I think about consciousness in a philosophical way, into describing matters of the 12th house, is that consciousness is not a thing in the brain, It's not a thing out there. It is our connection between ourselves and all other things that exist, right? So our brain is like a TV receiver. A moment of conscious awareness is like the receiving of a signal. But fundamentally, what is consciousness? Well, it's everything, It's everything that, it's the metaphysical framework of, say, truth itself, goodness itself. It is our basis for living, for existing. So to deal with 8th house matters, you're generally dealing with your coping mechanisms, with the sort of subconscious walls that you put up to guard yourself, to protect yourself. 12th house matters are dealt with by existing and letting the true patterns emerge. And it's not something you can really go searching for, because you are expressing a 12th house deficiency by consciously searching to begin with. It is the house of everything all at once. It's the house of spirituality. You need a spiritual path for your life that's really meaningful and truly and grounded in truth and goodness in order to exist in the 12th house realm, and with lots of placements in the 12th house, especially if they're adversely aspected. So anyway, that's a little difference between 8th house and 12th house issues, and where you have to go to search for them and how you go about doing that. 8th house is about cutting the habits, the behavior. It's the behavioral level, subconscious behavioral level. 12th house is existential, metaphysical, spiritual. So you just have to exist and let those patterns emerge, then attack them usually after the fact, when you realize what has emerged. Can't go searching for it. That's an infliction of the ego onto something that's well greater than yourself, which is the 12th house. Hope you enjoyed this. See you in the next one. Cheers.